They stood at the edge of a ravine, with the wind rising behind them and an empire in front of them. No walls, no reinforcements, no escape, just dust, steel, and a decision that would change history forever. The Byzantine Empire had ruled this land for centuries. Its armies were trained, armored, and confident. Its generals had fought every enemy imaginable. Across from them stood an army that should not have existed, outnumbered, poorly equipped, exhausted by years of war. And yet, they did not retreat. This was not a battle for territory. This was a battle for belief. The Byzantines believed numbers win wars. They believed discipline breaks resistance. They believed this would be quick. They were wrong. But at Yarmuk, the desert became a weapon. Fear became a mistake. And leadership became the difference between survival and collapse. One man moved like a shadow across the battlefield, appearing where the line was breaking, vanishing before the enemy could respond. His name would echo through centuries. But by the time the dust settled, an empire would lose its grip on the east. And a force the world underestimated would prove it was unstoppable. This is not the story of a lucky victory. This is the story of how discipline defeated numbers, how unity shattered arrogance, and how a single battle redrew the map of the world. Stay with this story, because Yarmuk was not won in a single charge. It was won through patience, sacrifice, and decisions that still matter today. This is Battle Memoirs. Before Yarmuk became a name whispered in shock, the world already believed it knew how power worked. Empires rose because they were rich. They endured because they were disciplined. And they survived because no one dared challenge them. For the Byzantine Empire, this had been true for centuries. Greek, an empire that had already suffered and survived by the early 7th century, Byzantium was tired but proud. Only years earlier, it had been brought to its knees by the Persians. Jerusalem had fallen. Sacred relics were taken. The empire looked finished. But Emperor Heraclius did the impossible. He reorganized. He marched east, he struck back. Against all odds, Byzantium defeated Persia and reclaimed its lands. To the empire, this victory proved something dangerous, that survival meant invincibility. If Persia could fall, who else could truly threaten them? A new force the world did not understand. While empires fought and recovered, something unexpected was happening in Arabia. For generations, the region had been dismissed. No cities of marble, no standing armies, no imperial traditions. Yet from this land emerged a community unlike any before it, bound not by blood but by belief. Their strength was not wealth. It was discipline, it was unity, it was purpose, and most importantly, they did not see themselves as fighting for conquest. They believed they were carrying responsibility. Two worldviews on a collision course. Byzantium fought wars to defend borders, to maintain order, to preserve hierarchy. The Muslim armies marched with a different mindset. They expected hardship, they accepted sacrifice. They did not measure victory by survival alone. This difference would soon matter more than numbers, would grow early clashes and growing fear. At first, Byzantine commanders underestimated them. These are raiders. They will scatter. They cannot stand against professional legions. But battle after battle told a different story. Cities fell, not because walls failed, but because morale did. Entire garrisons withdrew. Local allies switched sides. Whispers spread through imperial ranks. These enemies do not fight like others. To the decision that changed everything, Heraclius faced a choice. He could concede territory temporarily and regroup later, or he could strike once with overwhelming force and erase the threat forever. He chose the second. Orders went out across the empire. Veteran units, allied contingents, heavy cavalry, infantry hardened by decades of war. This would not be a skirmish. This would be a final answer. The land that would decide history. The armies began moving south toward a region few had ever considered important. A place of valleys, wind, and open ground. The Yarmuk River. To the Byzantines, it was simply terrain. To history, it would become a test. a quiet preparation on the other side. The Muslim commanders knew what was coming. They did not rush, they did not panic. They consolidated forces. They studied the land. They prepared their men for a fight they could not afford to lose. And among them was a commander whose presence alone changed outcomes. A man who understood movement, timing, and the enemy's mind. Soon, the world would learn his name. The armies are marching. The land is chosen. In the next act, overconfidence will meet preparation, and strategy will begin to outweigh numbers. Stay with this story, because Yarmuk was not decided in a single day, but in the choices made before the first sword was raised. The armies did not meet immediately. They watched each other first. Across the plains near the Yarmuk River, two very different forces began to understand that this would not be a simple engagement. What stood between them was not just land, but belief, patience, and fear. To the Byzantine camp, confidence with cracks. The Byzantine army was vast. Veterans from years of war. Heavy cavalry armored in steel. Infantry drilled to hold formation under pressure. To many of its officers, this felt familiar. They had crushed rebellions. They had faced Persians. They had marched through chaos before. But beneath the order, cracks began to form. The army was made up of many peoples. Greeks, Armenians, Slavs, allies, who spoke different languages and trusted different commanders. Unity existed on paper, not always in spirit. This command without one voice. The Byzantine command structure was layered. Too layered. Decisions took time. Orders were debated. Responsibility was shared, and therefore diluted. Some generals argued for caution. Others pushed for immediate battle. Each believed the enemy would break if struck hard enough. None believed they could lose. That belief would soon be tested. Across the field, a different preparation. On the other side, the Muslim army was smaller. They knew it, they felt it. There was no illusion of safety. Every commander understood that defeat here would not mean retreat. It would mean collapse. So they prepared differently. They studied the land carefully. The ravines, the winds, the paths cavalry could and could not take. They did not rush the moment, they waited for it. Just the arrival of Khalid ibn al-Walid. Then came a shift. A commander whose reputation traveled faster than armies. Khalid ibn al-Walid did not bring more soldiers. He brought clarity. He reorganized the army into flexible units. He emphasized movement over force, response over rigidity. Where others saw numbers, he saw timing. Where others feared the enemy's size, he saw its weight. Skirmishes without commitment. Small clashes began. Not battles, tests, cavalry probing flanks. Archers measuring distance, infantry holding, then withdrawing. To the Byzantines, these seemed insignificant. To Khalid, they were lessons. Every response revealed a weakness. Every advance showed hesitation. The battlefield was speaking. Only one side was listening, but the mistake of familiar thinking. Byzantine commanders planned as they always had. Hold the line, use cavalry for decisive charges. Break the enemy's center. It had worked for generations. What they did not account for was an opponent who refused to fight predictably. The desert was not flat ground, and Yarmuk was not open space. The morale takes shape among the Muslim soldiers. Something hardened. They had seen the enemy's size, and they did not flee. They trusted their leaders. They trusted their formation. They trusted one another. Among the Byzantines, confidence remained, but unease crept in. Why had the enemy not attacked? Why did they keep withdrawing intact? Why did every clash end without resolution? These questions lingered. The land closes in. As days passed, movement became restricted. Ravines limited retreat. Winds carried dust into armor and eyes. The ground favored those who could move lightly. The Byzantines had chosen the battlefield. Only now did they realize it might not favor them. Days of battle no one can avoid messages moved through both camps. The waiting was ending. The first full engagement was coming. Not a test, not a probe, a commitment. And once it began, there would be no easy withdrawal. The armies have measured each other. The land has revealed its shape. In the next act, hesitation will turn into action. and the first real blows would be struck. Stay with this story, because Yarmuk is about to begin, and the assumptions of empires are about to be challenged. When the fighting finally began, it did not arrive like a storm. It came like pressure, slow, relentless, unavoidable. At Yarmuk, no side could afford a mistake, but only one side understood that fully. The dawn without triumph. The first morning broke quietly. Two armies faced each other across open ground, the air heavy with expectation. There were no speeches that changed hearts, no dramatic charge that decided the day. Instead, commanders watched. Signals were sent. Units advanced cautiously. Lines formed and held. This was not a battle meant to be won in hours. It was a battle meant to exhaust the other first. Breathe the Byzantine push. The Byzantines moved as they had always done. Infantry advanced in solid formation. Cavalry positioned to strike decisively. The center pressed forward with confidence. At first, it seemed to work. The Muslim lines gave ground, not in panic but in order. To Byzantine eyes, this looked like weakness. To Khalid, it was information. Controlled withdrawal. The retreat was deliberate. Units fell back without breaking. Flanks adjusted, gaps closed quickly. What appeared to be pressure relief was actually shape-taking. The Muslim army was learning the enemy's rhythm, how fast they advanced, how long they held, where they hesitated. The Byzantines mistook patience for fear. Dagger the first counterstroke. When the moment came, it was brief and precise. Cavalry moved, not in mass, but in focused response. They struck where formations stretched too far, then withdrew before reinforcements arrived. The message was subtle but clear. This enemy could not be pinned down. Dagger's confusion in command, Byzantine officers began issuing adjustments. Advance further, hold here, press harder, but layered command slowed reaction. By the time orders reached the front, conditions had already changed. What should have been control became hesitation. And hesitation on a battlefield is felt immediately. The battlefield becomes familiar. As the days passed, patterns emerged. The Muslim forces learned the ground, where footing was firm, where movement slowed, where dust and wind interfered with vision. The Byzantines, heavy and numerous, felt the land resisting them. What had once seemed neutral now felt hostile. With morale under pressure among the Muslim ranks, confidence grew, not loudly but steadily. They had held, they had responded, they had not been broken. Among the Byzantines, something quieter happened. Questions replaced certainty. Why had the enemy not collapsed? Why did every gain feel temporary? Why did the battlefield never settle? These doubts did not stop the army, but they slowed it. Khalid's silent reorganization. Between engagements, Khalid adjusted positions. Not dramatically, not visibly. Small shifts, flexible groupings. Rapid response cavalry held back, waiting. He was not seeking victory yet. He was shaping inevitability. To the end of the beginning. As the first phase ended, both sides paused, not by choice, but by exhaustion. No decisive blow had fallen, yet the balance had shifted. The Byzantines had failed to impose their will. The Muslim army had proven it could endure, and endurance at Yarmuk was already becoming power. Or the battle has begun, but it has not yet revealed its purpose. In the next act, endurance will turn into maneuver, and patience will become a weapon. Stay with this story, because Yarmuk is about to change its rhythm, and when it does, there will be no turning back. If the first days of Yarmuk were about endurance, this phase was about decision. What had been measured pressure was about to become motion. And motion, when guided well, changes everything. The weight of numbers becomes a burden. The Byzantine commanders believed time favored them. They had more men, more supplies, more reserves, so they pressed harder. Lines advanced deeper. Cavalry committed in larger numbers. The center pushed, seeking a collapse that never came. But the battlefield tightened. Ravines restricted movement. Dust clouds reduced vision. Coordination became difficult. What once looked like strength began to feel heavy. Khalid reads the moment. Khalid had been waiting for this. He had watched how the Byzantine cavalry responded, how quickly infantry could redeploy where commands slowed. Now the enemy was committed, not recklessly but fully. This was the moment when flexibility mattered more than force. The cavalry reserve moves for days. Khalid had kept a mobile force back, not idle, not unused, prepared. When the signal came, they did not charge blindly. They moved around the battlefield, fast, controlled, deliberate. They struck flanks not to destroy, but to disrupt. Formations bent, communication faltered. And then, before the Byzantines could respond, the cavalry was gone. The rhythm breaks. The Byzantines tried to adapt. Orders were issued, units redirected. But the tempo had changed. The enemy was no longer reacting. They were deciding. Every Byzantine movement met a counter. Every advance exposed a weakness. The battlefield no longer belonged to the larger army. It belonged to the one that could move. Pressure without panic. The Muslim infantry held firm. They did not rush forward. They did not pursue recklessly. They absorbed pressure, knowing relief would arrive from the flanks. This discipline mattered. It meant the line never broke, even when tested. And every failed push drained the enemy further. The land closes the trap. As fighting intensified, space disappeared. Ravines limited retreat, open ground narrowed. The army with more weight found fewer options. The Byzantines began to realize that disengaging was no longer simple. What had seemed like open terrain had become a corridor. Leadership under strain. Byzantine commanders argued. Some called for withdrawal and regrouping. Others demanded one final push. But coordination had already suffered. Messages arrived late. Responses overlapped. Leadership existed, but not unity. Across the field, orders were simpler. Hold move, strike, withdraw. Clarity proved decisive. Momentum changes. Sides, momentum is not noise, it is a feeling. Among the Muslim forces, resolve hardened into certainty. They could feel the enemy reacting instead of commanding. Among the Byzantines, urgency replaced confidence. They were no longer shaping the battle, they were surviving it. The point of no return. As the day wore on, one truth became unavoidable. The balance had shifted, not because of numbers, not because of chance, but because one army controlled movement and the other no longer did. Yarmuk had reached its turning point. What followed would not be slow. The battle has found its direction. The trap has taken shape. In the final act, momentum will become outcome, and the fate of empires will be decided. Stay with this story, because Yarmuk is about to deliver its verdict. Empires do not fall all at once. They fall in moments, when decisions fail, when cohesion disappears, and when belief quietly breaks. At Yarmuk, that moment arrived not with a single strike, but with a realization. When retreat becomes impossible, the Byzantines attempted to disengage, not in panic, but in calculation. They needed space, time, a chance to regroup. But the land no longer offered it. Movement routes narrowed. Formations struggled to turn. Units that withdrew found others pressing behind them. What had once been an option became a problem. Momentum turns into collapse. The Muslim forces did not rush victory. They pressed steadily. Cavalry controlled movement. Infantry held firm. Command remained clear. The Byzantines began to lose cohesion. Not everywhere, but enough. And in large armies, small failures multiply. Leadership without control. Orders were still given, but they arrived late or contradicted one another. Some units advanced while others pulled back. Coordination frayed. The empire's greatest strength, organization, failed when it was needed most. The field decides. The battlefield itself finished the work. Terrain restricted escape, fatigue slowed reaction. Dust and noise dissolved clarity. What had begun as a contest of strength ended as a test of control. Only one side still had it. The battle ends. By the time resistance faded, the outcome was undeniable. Not total destruction, not sudden silence, but irreversible defeat. The Byzantine army withdrew, not to prepare another advance, but to accept a new reality. The eastern provinces were lost, not because they were undefended, but because the empire no longer had the strength to reclaim them. The world after Yarmuk The consequences moved faster than the armies. Cities reassessed loyalties, borders shifted, old certainties vanished. For the Byzantine Empire, Yarmuk marked the end of dominance in the Levant. For the Muslim world, it marked arrival, not as raiders, not as outsiders, but as a force capable of defeating an empire in open battle. Khalid ibn al-Walid's legacy. Khalid did not claim a throne. He did not found a dynasty, but his understanding of movement, timing, and leadership reshaped warfare. Yarmuk was not remembered because of spectacle. It was remembered because it proved something lasting, that discipline can defeat numbers, that unity can overcome tradition, that adaptability outlives power, why Yarmuk still matters. Yarmuk is studied not because it was inevitable, but because it was not. Different choices could have changed its course. That is why it endures. It reminds us that history turns when leaders misunderstand their enemy and when preparation outpaces pride. Yarmuk was not just a battle, it was a lesson written in movement, patience, and consequence. If this story held you, there are more moments like it waiting, moments where history changed direction quietly before the world noticed. Subscribe to ANA 247 TV because the past is not finished speaking, and Battle Memoirs is where it is heard.